Next, we will see how we can reuse code in Spring. So basically, inheritance means a parent-child relationship. And in Java, inheritance between classes means that there will be two classes, wherein one class, which is called the parent class, will have some attributes and methods, and all of these attributes and methods, all the members of the parent class, will be inherited by the child class, so that we can reuse code and we need not write that code again and again in the child class. But bean inheritance has nothing to do with the Java class inheritance. So both of these concepts are very different. In case of bean inheritance, we are talking of inheriting the configuration data from a parent bean. So let's say we have a bean which we are calling the parent bean, and it has some configuration data. So we have set some data in that bean, and if we want to reuse that data in some other bean, then we can specify a bean to be a child of that parent bean. So the classes need not be parent and child. So the class of parent bean and the class of child bean need not be in some parent-child relationship. They can be the beans of same type or different type. So there is no restriction on that. The only thing is that it should have attributes of the same name so that those attributes can be inherited. So the child definition can also override some values. So if there are some properties which are already set in the parent bean, but we want to override the value, then the child bean can also override some of the values, or it can also add new values as and when required. So we can do this using the parent attribute of the bean tag, and we will see a demonstration of how we can do how we can achieve this reuse of code in Spring. For the demonstration, I have created a new beans.xml. So I have named this beans underscore 2.xml, and I've created this class which is employee, and class employee has private data members, which is company of the employee, department of the employee, name and salary of the employee. Then we have public constructors and we have public getters and setters, and we also have a toString method. So in the beans.xml, here we will, let's say, first specify a bean, and this bean. So, when will there be a case where we would want to reuse the data that we have set in a parent bean? So, it might be the case that we want to create multiple employees belonging to the same company, right? So, instead of setting the company property again and again, we will create a single bean with the company name, only the company name, and then when we are creating employees, we will be reusing this same employee as the parent of those employees. So let us create employee of RCOEM. So this is a bean ID where we are specifying this to be of type sprdemo.emp, and here we will use setter injection to set the property company with the value RCOEM. So this is the company of this bean. So basically we will be creating an object which contains a value only for the company, and rest of the values will be null because they have not been set. Now, assuming that we have many departments, so for now let us just create one department. So let's call this employee of CSRCOEM, and now instead so because the company is going to remain the same, we want that company should be RCOEM, and in addition to that, we want to say that the department is CS, right? So because we already have a bean which is EMP RCOEM, which has the company set to RCOEM, what we will now do is we will only specify the department CSE, and here we will specify the parent attribute to be EMP RCOEM. So this means that we have to inherit all properties of the parent. So all properties means we have just one property in the parent, which is company, and an additional property that we are specifying is the department with the value CSE, right? Now, in the same way, if we want to create multiple employees of CS department of RCOEM, then in that case, what we will do is we can directly inherit EMP CS RCOEM. So let's call this employee 1 E1, and in the parent we will specify employee CS RCOEM. In the properties, now we only need to specify the name. So this is name of the person, and we need to specify the other property, which is salary. So let's say salary is, now what does this mean? This means that the bean E1 inherits all properties from the parent, which is employee CS. So all properties of employee CS means the department is CSE and the company is RCOM. And in addition to that, it has name XXYY and salary 90,000. In the same way, we can create multiple employees. So we have created E1, E2, E3, and E4. So we have created 4 employees, and let's name them something different. So all these 4 employees are child of the parent being EMPCS RCOM. That is, all of these will have the same property, same value for the property department and for the property company. So all of them will have company ISOM, department CAC. Now, let's say you want to create another bean, but you do not want the department to be CS. So in that case, we can also create a bean this way. So we can say bean ID E5, where E5 is of type employee. The parent is employee CS RCOEM. But let's say we want to set the department to be, right. So now in this case, what will happen is, even though department is specified in employee CS RCOEM, but because we are explicitly specifying the property again, so this value of department, which is IT, will override the previous value, which was CS, right? So for employee 5, the value that we are printing will be IT. So let's just take a look at the output. So in the Spring demo, here you will have to change the name of the file. So it was beans.xml earlier. Now it will be beans_2.xml, and then we are printing all the beans which are in this file. So when we run this, here we can see we have beans employee RCOM, which is only having company set to RCOM and other properties are set to null. Then for employee CS RCOM, this is another object or another bean wherein the company and department are set. In case of E1, E2, E3 and E4, so we have reused this code where we are setting company as RCOM and department as CAC, and we are only adding the values that are varying for each of our beans. In case of E5, as you can see, even though E5 is a child of employee CSR COM, it is having the value of IT for the department attribute because we had overridden this value. So a child bean can override the values of a parent bean.